The United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case. But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization. I once again urge the Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian military and police to lay down your arms and receive full immunity or face certain death.
Undoubtedly strong words from U.S. President Donald Trump on the success, the reported success, according to Donald Trump, of Operation Epic Fury, hitting hundreds of targets in Iran in minutes. It's now time to delve deeper and take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. And joining us on the show to do so is Adefemi Akinsonya. Good morning, Adefemfem. How are you?
Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, Rufai. How are you doing?
You didn't get much of a weekend, did you?
Not much, not much.
Lots of breaking news.
Lots of breaking news. Yes. A lot happening from Friday into Saturday into Sunday. And you know what else happened on Sunday, Vimbai?
I know. Please just face the Iran
I was
story.
asking Vimbai, do you know what happened on Sunday?
Something to do with the colour red?
Oh, I believe London is red. Would you believe that?
Face the Iran story. Focus.
Thank you very much.
Focus.
Good morning to you, viewers. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Now, the deadly conflict between the United States and Iran is escalating. US President Donald Trump has spoken again, giving this update on Operation Epic Fury. Let's take a listen.
These actions are right and they are necessary to ensure that Americans will never have to face a radical, bloodthirsty terrorist regime armed with nuclear weapons and lots of threats. For almost 50 years, these wicked extremists have been attacking the United States while chanting the slogan, "Death to America" or "Death to Israel" or both. They are the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. We are the world's greatest and most powerful nation, so we can do something about what they do. These intolerable threats will not continue any longer. I once again urge the Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian military and police to lay down your arms and receive full immunity or face certain death. It will be certain death.
Well, we now know that 3 American service members have been killed in Kuwait and 5 others seriously wounded during Iran's retaliatory strikes. Now, their deaths mark the first American casualties in a major offensive that President Donald Trump said could likely lead to more losses. He also says that this conflict could last up to 4 to 5 weeks. Now, Trump says that he will avenge their deaths, but concedes that more American deaths are likely. Let's take a listen to what Donald Trump had to say about that.
As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case.
Well, Trump has also revealed more information about the motivation behind the decision to target Iran's supreme leader. Now, in a phone call with ABC News chief Washington correspondent, Trump said this about Ayatollah Khamenei. Now, he said this clearly. He said, I got him before he got me. They tried twice, and well, I got him first. Now, this is clearly a reference to what US intelligence believes was a plot to kill the US President Donald Trump in 2024. So if that is the case, does this make this conflict more about protecting Trump himself over the American people? Well, back in the United States, American politicians are speaking out. Congress was not consulted before starting this war. And Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate representing Texas, James Talarico, says that Trump should have addressed the American people for approval before engaging in conflict. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Our Constitution is clear that it's Congress that should declare war. And so I absolutely think the president and his administration should come before Congress and therefore come before the American people and make their case. I was 12 years old when 9/11 happened. I know the importance of keeping this nation safe. As a millennial, I saw how military disasters like the Iraq War robbed this nation of young lives, of billions of dollars, of our moral standing in the world. And so I'm tired of forever wars. And I think if this commander-in-chief wants to justify this military action, he should have to do that out in public, and he should go before the people's representatives in Congress.
Now, this is even more significant, us looking at Texas, because in Austin, Texas, on Sunday, this man, he's identified as 53-year-old Ndiaga Diagne. He killed at least 2 people and wounded 14 others at a bar on the streets, at a bar and on the streets surrounding a bar before he was eventually killed by police. Now, the American press is reporting that Diagne was wearing a jumper, as you can see pictured here, which says "Property of Allah" on it. And then underneath this jumper, it is reported that he was wearing a t-shirt which had the Iranian flag on it. Now, it is important to note that while we do have pictures of the top jumper and what it says, we can't independently verify whether or not there was an Iranian logo on the t-shirt at this point. And clearly no formal link to any specific group or motive has been established, but this is clearly quite significant. Meanwhile, back in Iran, Ali Laudani, who is the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, he released this warning on X. And he said, speaking about the events of the weekend, yesterday Iran fired missiles at the United States and Israel, and they did hurt. Today, we will hit them with a force they have never experienced before. Very strong words, because it does appear Iran is feeling its way through this war gradually. Now, Khamenei himself has been buried now, according to Islamic rights, and it does appear that Iran wants to show its people, especially those who are in mourning, that they are fighting back. Why? Well, let's not forget that at least 153 people, most of them Iranian school children, were killed, scores were injured, and some are still stuck under the rubble after Israel struck an Iranian girls' primary school on Saturday. Now, the United Nations have called this specific attack a gross violation of humanitarian law. And over in Israel, at least 20 people have been killed and at least 100 others injured following attacks from Iran. Now, the IDF has instructed at least 1,000 Israelis to evacuate their communities and their homes for their own safety. A missile coming from Iran did completely flatten a synagogue in Israel, and we are seeing the fallback of attacks that struck in Jerusalem. Now, days later from all of this, from the beginning, we see that this conflict is inevitably expanding. Now, in addition to the attacks in Lebanon, Bahrain, Kuwait in recent hours, Iran is also hitting parts of the Middle East where it hurts the most. The airports, which serve as vital transit hubs for global trade and travel. Now, Dubai International Airport, which you can see on your screens there, is the world's busiest airport. It remains shuttered. Flights at Doha's Hamad International Airport, which is also one of the world's busiest transport hubs, have been halted, and the disruption could impact the volume of air cargo shipments that pass through the airport to destinations worldwide. Now, shares of Australia's Qantas Airlines, Singapore Airlines, and Japan Airlines all dipped by more than 5% on Monday. Now, Iran has also targeted seaports and shipping routes, disrupting the Strait of Hormuz, which you see here. It is clearly a strategically very important area. Iran is right here, and they are in control of what really passes through them. And so we are seeing that clearly this is one of the world's most critical choke points for oil, which has and will inevitably cause oil prices to rise. And we will see that happening. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom has accepted the United States' request to use its bases. They did accept, and after that decision, a British Royal Air Force base in Cyprus was attacked. Now, at this point, there have been no records of any casualties, but this is just another example of how this conflict is dragging in more countries, more assets around the world. Now, looking ahead, Iran does say that a new supreme leader could be chosen in a day or two. But before that, the exiled Iranian crown prince Reza Pahlavi has put himself forward as a possible interim leader. He is clearly pro-United States, and he has called the US-Israel strikes beginning, or essentially he's called it the beginning of the very end of the regime. Now, he is claiming final victory is near. Let's take a listen to what he had to say to Fox News.
Game changer we've been waiting for all this time. The jubilation of Iranians at home and abroad shows how much people were hoping for this moment. And I join millions of Iranians thanking President Trump for taking this into action and delivering on his promise. We are so elated of the fact that now we have the beginning of the very end of the regime, because at least we are going to see more and more decimation of this regime, which can only equal the playing field so that the Iranian people could come back to the streets and claim their country back from this hated regime.
Now we come back to Donald Trump himself. He is the one who started this portion of this conflict. Now, one of the many questions before the US president, and one of the many questions he's going to face, is what is his own threshold for the cost of war? Does he have a limit? If so, what is it? The World Brief will continue to bring you answers to the questions that matter. Dr. Rubin, Vimbai, Rufai, you're welcome. I know that you've all been following what's been happening across the weekend. The audience, I am very keen to hear your thoughts. So before we go on to the newspapers, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what has happened, transpired in Iran and across the Middle East this weekend.
Thank you so much, Femi. A very lovely report you made there. So what did we see over the weekend? We saw an America trying to assert itself and telling the world that we don't care about the feelings of the rule-based order in the world. We saw an American president that didn't get a clearance from the Congress, despite the fact that the American Constitution talks about the Congress being that clearance point before you go to war. At least even George Bush had the decency of going through Congress before he invaded Afghanistan. But we saw an American leader that didn't think of that. We saw an American leader that war has become a game to him. But this was the same leader that campaigned that he was against wars. We saw in America that just over the weekend, before the weekend, around on Friday, when they were trying to twist Anthropic to be able to give them their Claude AI to be able to have a kill strike option, we knew that they wanted to go all out. And Anthropic says, no, we'll stand by our technology. We don't want it to be used as a killing machine. And we now saw the reason for blacklisting Anthropic, because Trump wanted to go to war. He's a warmonger. And we also saw an Israel that went into the fray and that went on a killing spree. All of these things I've said, does Iran have its faults? Yes. The regime led by Ayatollah, now passed, was a very terrible regime. It was a regime that killed its people, was high-handed. And at some point, that empire was going to end. But what are the arguments behind ending the empire? Nuclear weapons. Really? Is that the logic or a lie? If you had read what the Omanian representative had said, he said they were already close to a deal. Then Trump went ahead to strike.
At the last minute, yes.
And let's even go to the argument of the nuclear weapon. So Israel can have close to 100 warheads of nuclear weapon, as it's been alleged by the likes of Jimmy Carter, by the likes of Mordecai Vahum, that revealed their secret way back many years ago, and by the likes of an intelligence report in Britain. So Israel can keep the nuclear weapon. Let me dial you back historically. When the Shah was still in power, do you know that something called Project Flower was proposed by Israel to Iran to help Iran get missiles that can carry nuclear warheads? The same Israel that felt it was okay to be able to make missiles available that can carry nuclear warheads to Iran when the Shah was there. And the same Israel that has nuclear weapons today, although it has a doctrine of ambiguity, not accepting or denying, and has its own nuclear weapon, but the Americans say Iran cannot have it. But when the Shah was there, their ally, Iran could have it. So in this war, you see a lot of hypocrisy by the West. Mm-hmm. The same hypocrisy was what made America attack Mossadegh in the 50s, because it was about oil for them. And they took over that government and they brought in the Shah. And it's because the Shah is no longer there, they've been trying to bring in the Shah's son now, which is Reza Pahlavi, that was saying, go after your country. But Reza forgets, why did his father leave the throne? It was the same way the people were disgruntled with the Shah administration then. When we talk about the Iranian Revolution, the Shah was already broken before the revolution. Ayatollah Khomeini was not even around in Iran when the revolution happened.
Thank you. Fine.
So let's not forget this historical context. America can have their war carrier, aircraft carriers and the rest there to invade and destroy. Trump has said it was going on for weeks, but we have also seen the hypocrisy of the West itself.
Let's see. Thank you, Rufai.
Should I go next?
Yes, please.
All right. Wow. Okay. Quite unprecedented developments that we've seen over the past 48 to going on to 72 hours now, I believe, or over from the weekend. But I think for me, one of the major moments began last week when Donald Trump delivered his State of the Union address. There are two major things he said there. The first thing he said was he announced the beginning of an American golden age. The second thing he did, amongst others, of course, is that he announced what he thought was an estimated death toll of those protesters that had been killed in Iran. Of course, that number has been subjected to what is being called the death toll Olympics, because human rights activists and even Iranian officials have a wide variance of how many people died in the Iranian protests, ranging from about 3,100, the official Iranian figure, up to over 30,000, according to President Donald Trump. Why do I put all of this into context? Well, the beginning of the American age means the end of something, and that is the end of the American century. What defined the American century? It was the era that the United States became the world's superpower. The first phase of that century was marked by a US dollar backed by gold. This is how the United States dollar became the currency that dominated the world. I'm going somewhere. The Nixon shock in 1971 brought an end to a US dollar that was backed by gold. And this is how the United States moved a few years later into the petrodollar, which is the agreement that the world will hedge oil to US dollars. What do we now see currently with the rise of BRICS, with the war in Russia, and with all of the geopolitical shifts? We see countries for the first time in history moving away from trading in oil in US dollars and looking for alternate ways to trade. Now, I've said that the supremacy of the United States is banked on the US dollar. Now, if the global politics are shifting towards a world where the US dollar is no longer the mode of trade for oil, then that creates a huge dent in America's supremacy, if I may call it that. So we now enter into Iran, which is a country that, of course, has been a thorn in the flesh of the American administration and generally the global north for a very long time. We speak of a regime change and the attempt to change a regime regime, of course, with the hope of putting somebody more favorable in there who will have policies that can support a petrodollar and a U.S. supremacy. However, Iran does not have a regime. Iran has what is called an ideological theocracy, which is that the institutions are all based on the foundation of religion. Everything there, the fabric of how the nation is governed, is done so through the spectrum of religion. So removing an Ayatollah, for example, will not result in regime change because the entire, you have an entire institutional network from top to bottom that is indoctrinated into a deep system that falls under the Islamic State. So, there's so many things, unfortunately, not enough time to unpack all of those things. Very quickly, before I hand over to Dr. Abati, we see the impact here in Nigeria, reports of protest by IMN, led by El Zakzaki in Kano, in Bauchi, in Gombe, in Sokoto, which we'll get into later as well. So you see that Iran has also been a hub that has been a doctrine headquarters for several organizations around the world, some peaceful, many not, Hamas, Hezbollah, and so forth. I cede the floor.
Okay, very quickly. Over the weekend, we witnessed Operation Roaring Lion, which the Israeli Defense Forces declared against Iran, and Operation Epic Fury, which the United States, led by President Trump, declared against the Iranian state. And both of them, they had a joint operation. Now, where do things stand? We all know where things stand. The decapitation of the leadership of Iran and also the destabilization of the global rules-based order. And now, where will things go next? And what is the future of Iran after now, and particularly with the death of Khamenei? Well, in terms of the future, what I see is that, this is going to be further escalation. Yesterday, I was discussing the subject with Ambassador Keshi, and I was saying that this looks like the end of diplomacy as we know it. He said, no, we shouldn't talk about the end of diplomacy. That diplomacy will be still useful. But it looks like the brutalization of diplomacy, the transactional nature that global diplomacy has assumed, and then the idea that might is right. And the United States, in formulating the modern American foreign policy process under President Trump, will seem to be a big exemplar of how might has become right in international relations. Might becoming right is also a violation of international law. The President of the United States has removed two presidents, the president of Venezuela and the president of the supreme leader of Iran, two of them in just 1 month. And he has done it in gross violation, unconscionable violation of the international order. He has also, Americans, who are knowledgeable, argue in violation of the rules, even in the United States itself. Now, he gave the State of the Union address that you refer to. He spoke for 1 hour, 47 minutes. Out of that 1 hour, 47 minutes, he referred to Iran only for 3 minutes. And then he was going to attack Iran. He didn't seek congressional approval that the United States Constitution requires. He has acted also in defiance of the Congress, which in itself is a violation. But Trump has been consistent in disobeying Congress, in saying that Congress is redundant, and in also proving that he does not respect the international order. That's the background in terms of legal justification, which does not appear to exist. Now, excuse. The Israelis, they say, Iran needs to be checked because of nuclear pretext, or that it has a nuclear enrichment, uranium enrichment, which is not going to back down from. The Americans make the same point. They accuse Iran also of terrorism. They accuse Iran also of all kinds of things, terrorism inclusive, death to Israel, death to the West, that the Iranians are accused of mounting. However, the whole thing behind it is about American dominance, American exceptionalism. It's not even just about nuclear armament. It's about power, a game of power. And when you look at it in terms of the connection between Venezuela and, Iran, now the biggest threat to the United States is China. And if you look at Venezuela, they were trying to stop China in Venezuela.
Indeed.
In Greenland, the target was also China. In Iran, it's also China at the background. Iran exports 14 point... okay, no, that's through the Strait of Hormuz. They produce about 3.3 million barrels of crude per day. Now, the Strait of Hormuz, which is by their border, is a major choke point for global trade, for energy transactions. Now, that exports about 14.5 million barrels of crude per day. Now, 3/4 of that go to India, China, Japan, and South Korea. So if the United States can seize Venezuela, global oil supply, and can seize the Strait of Hormuz, then, of course, it's further American dominance. You talked about Strait of Hormuz. That's why I referred to it.
Yes,
what's next? Now, Khomeini is dead. They have formed, in line with Article 111, of the Iranian constitution, a body that will oversee, an interim body comprising the president, the chief justice, and an interim leader. Now, but they will still have to form a council. Then they will choose a new supreme leader. Al-Jafani, Jarifani, that you refer to, the security chief. He says, no, they are not going to negotiate with the United States. Trump has been saying they will talk, they will do. That is not likely to happen.
Yes.
Somebody also said it will take 4 to 5 weeks. That's not true. Nobody knows how this would end.
Yes,
and a lot will depend in terms of global stability and other issues on how long the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, partially or fully, because importers, exporters, traders will now have to go through the Cape of Good Hope, which is a very long route, and all of us will suffer because the prices of everything will rise, including the pump price of fuel.
It is.
Beyond the fact that people are saying Nigeria will make more money. We will meet it at the pump.
Exactly. That's how they're going to make more money. Indeed.
Inflation is going to hit us.
Thank you all for your wonderful submissions on this huge story. I know you'll be talking about it throughout the day, but let's take a look now at our newspaper headlines because they will also be weighing in on this. So as ever, we begin with This Day, and This Day does report that uncertainty is surrounding Iran's future, and that is after the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei, as the ruling establishment retains control despite US calls for regime change, while escalating conflict has raised oil prices, disrupted Middle East air travel, and heightened global security concerns. This Day is also reporting that INEC chairman, Professor Joash Omuputan, has assured Nigerians that the 2027 general elections would be the country's best yet, with no technical glitches. His words, we'll hold him to it. This Day, another story on the front page, has the federal government and the Africa Finance Corporation signing a $1.3 billion alumina refinery deal, and it's expected to boost Nigeria's mining sector and contribute $1.2 billion annually to GDP. Now, let's move on to our next papers today. We do have the Daily Trust this morning, and the Daily Trust is reporting that Shiite members of the Islamic movement in Nigeria staged protests across several northern states over the killing of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, while the police ordered heightened nationwide surveillance to prevent unrest and urged citizens to remain peaceful amid rising Middle East tensions. So just as Bimbai was mentioning, this does have a specific Nigerian context too. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph this morning, and the New Telegraph is reporting that the Inspector General of Police, Tunji Disu, has ordered heightened security and nationwide surveillance to prevent religious or sectarian unrest linked to the US-Israel conflict with Iran, directing commissioners of police throughout Nigeria to strengthen intelligence gathering, protect public spaces and worship centers to ensure Nigeria is not affected by these foreign tensions. Now, the Daily Independent this morning, it is reporting that Nigeria's electronic visa system is facing backlash from travelers over delays and high additional charges, which is raising concerns about the country's image for business and also for tourism. Now, we have the Daily Sun this morning, which is also reporting that 4 people have died in a stampede during a Ramadan arms distribution in Katsina State that happened in Guga quarters, and that is after a large crowd gathered at a philanthropist's residence. Now, police have confirmed that investigations are ongoing, but they have urged organizers of such handouts and such events to seek security support to prevent future incidents like stampedes. Well, take a look at our UK papers because we can imagine what they're going to be focusing on. The Daily Telegraph this morning has Britain giving the United States permission to use its military bases to strike Iran after Middle East allies came under attack from Tehran's missiles and drones. That includes the United Kingdom itself. I told you about the attack on the RAF in Cyprus. And then moving on to our next British paper, the Daily Mail does report that after US strikes on Tehran and Iran revenge attacks on tourist hotspots, including Dubai, 94,000 British citizens have registered their contact details with the Foreign Office amid a mass evacuation plan. That is according to the Daily Mail. And then we have The Sun, which is using really the same sentiment when it comes to what is happening over in the UAE, especially Dubai. Its headline says, "Escape from Dubai." And then lastly, we have the UK Guardian, and that wraps things up today. And the Guardian does lead with a very powerful picture headline of what we have seen over the weekend affecting Tehran and, of course, the rest of the Middle East. That is your newspaper review. That was your world brief. Thank you very much.
All right. I wish we could have commented on that, especially given some of the statements by the chairman of INEC, Joash Amupitan, who says that there will be a mock presidential election to test the technical machinery of INEC. Well, we're going to take a short break now. Thank you so much, Adefemi Akinsonya.